Got it. How's everything going today? Good?
Yeah, doing really good. Been in the studio a little bit this morning, helping a friend out with a song, and yeah, we're in good old Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay. The place to
Hot
be.
today. Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Where
heard.
you Where you from?
Well, I'm from New York, and right now I'm down in Jupiter, Florida, but we're going to be heading up north probably tomorrow. So,
Whew, good luck.
yeah, I know.
New York's a crazy place to be right now.
I know. That's what they say. We have family up there, so we gotta take a
Okay,
trip. So,
sure.
but it's all good. It's all good. So
Good
you're
deal.
from Nashville, right? Or just outside Nashville, Murfreesboro? Did I see?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. You pronounced it correctly as well. Brownie points. Yeah, good old Murfreesboro, Tennessee is where I'm from.
Okay. You'll get a kick out of this. I'm writing a new book, and actually, I have the main character of the book. He's an athlete. That's where he comes out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So I was laughing
That's
when I looked
amazing.
that up. I just, you know what, I related to the name, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. It's not a main city, but some people may recognize it. So I included
That
Murfreesboro.
is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I also
that
put
is amazing.
the Nashville Sounds, another minor league team. Sure, you've been to
Yep,
some of
that's
the games.
right. I haven't since they put up their new stadium. It's been a long time, but a lot of fun when we did go.
Yeah. No, that's super cool, man. So I'll tell you about the show. I do this show. It's called the Becoming a Champion Show. I love interviewing people from, sports, entertainment, and business. I find today everything sort of overlaps. A lot of athletes want to be musicians, musicians want to be athletes, and both want to be business people. So
Yep.
it provides a nice crossover. But I'd love to I always start with asking people about how they grew up. What was it like to be a young Colton Dixon, growing up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee? What did the world look like to a young man like you?
Yeah, man, it was pretty suburban. I mean, grew up. We had a close family. I have a younger sister as well. We did the American Idol thing together. But yeah, we played outside, and I didn't discover music until I was really like 12 or 13. Took piano lessons for a few years, but it wasn't until 13 that I was like, man, there's something to this. But yeah, I mean, average home. Had a lot of fun. Grew up in church, so music was always a big part of that, and singing and whatnot. But yeah, it was actually at a piano recital that I sang for the first time at 13 years old. And man, faith is a big part of what I do, and I think it was God just telling me, man, this is what I have for you. And yeah, that's what I pursued ever since. I actually grew up loving baseball as well. Played a
I
lot of baseball. Was a pitcher.
Okay.
So it was hard to give that up to pursue music, but I knew it was the right call.
Yeah, I heard that about you. I always love talking to baseball guys that go on and do big things. But was there a certain point, a certain pivot point for you where you said, okay, I'm gonna, abandon this pursuit of a sports career and I'm gonna go after music? Was there like one particular event in your life that sparked that?
And well, in high school, it's crazy the amount of time that you have to put in to dedicate to a sport. It just is, and I would have loved to have been able to juggle both. Just because I loved playing baseball, even if I didn't pursue it professionally. I just something I enjoyed doing. But man, I knew that I loved music more when I found myself practicing music more. Man, I would be in my music room for hours,
Mm,
whether it was trying to expand my vocal range or learning a new song or writing a song or whatever it was. So I just dedicated, and it was easy to dedicate time to. So I kind of just knew I had to pick because it would have been unfair for either one to try and do both. So
yeah. Now, how much,
yeah.
the fact that sports was such a big commitment, and it seems like it's becoming bigger and bigger and more of a commitment, as the years go on. How much did that
Yeah.
help you with your music career?
Oh my gosh. I played baseball, since T-ball, so having that work ethic, and my dad also coached. So anytime we were home and we were working on something or throwing ball or bunting or, I mean, you name it, we were doing it. And yeah, just taking all of that time and effort that I put into baseball, and then having all this free time to dedicate that to music was huge, because I developed all that work ethic and even working with other people. And that's the thing that I think is so great about sports, is even if you don't do it professionally, it's really cool to have your kids go through sports, because they learn how to work with other people and figure out teamwork and all these things that are really crucial life skills. So I learned some of those skills and got to apply it to music and what that could look like for a career and starting a band. And, really helped me a lot, actually.
Yeah. I imagine that it's somewhat, physically and mentally taxing doing what you do now. Being a musician, it's like athletes. People see what you do when you're on stage, but they don't realize what goes into it, behind the scenes. But I would imagine there's a pretty big, physical, emotional, and mental tax that goes with what you do as well.
Yeah, it has its good days, and there have been a few bad days along the way. What's kind of crazy about music is I guess baseball can be this way too, but music for me that's kind of how I journal. So whenever I write a song and I put it out for the world to hear, it's like the deepest part of me that maybe in baseball you don't share as much as you're on a pitcher's mound, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So having people say they like it or they don't can be hurtful, or it can go to your head all at the same time. So you kind of just have to sift through the hype, good or bad, and just do what you feel like you need to do. But yeah, that can be difficult.
Yeah. I have a question for you. It's interesting that, what you just said. I think a lot of guys, especially, right? Even athletic guys, they have a hard time putting it out there. Was that something that was hard for you to do in the beginning, or were you always a guy that, wore it on his sleeve and, I'm Colton and here's my list?
Sure. Yeah, I probably leaned more toward the artsy side and of being able just to kind of communicate how I'm feeling or what I'm going through. But what was kind of fun or funny or ironic, I guess, man, when I would pitch, like, I don't know how, but I could just block out things. The umpire would call a strike a ball, or, whatever it was. I would just smile and keep pitching. And it made my dad laugh as he was coaching. He was like, uh-oh, he's mad, but he's blocking it out, So I don't know. Whenever I was playing ball, it was a chance for me to just kind of block out things and not have to worry about things, which is nice. But with music, it's kind of the opposite. It's like the more that you lean on your emotions or your real life things or whatever, the audience can tell when something's authentic versus when it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool, man. I imagine there's a huge therapeutic component to that as well.
Oh yeah, man. It's great. But you also have to be careful of, not blocking out certain emotions or just bypassing them just because you don't want to deal with them at the time. I can be bad about that. So my wife tells me. But
how do you deal with that though?
But yeah, man, at one point or another, it's going to come out, and sometimes it's just not the right time. So us men, we can put things in a drawer and not worry about it, and which is nice, but when it comes out, it can be angry and ugly and whatever. So I try my best to get it out on paper when it's just me and write a song about it or whatever. It kind of helps me process and get through certain things.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's when you do your best writing, when there's something on your, on your head, on your heart, and you're just sitting there, it just comes together in that moment? Or is there a more in-depth writing process for you? Are you carving out time each day or each month? Or I love to learn about that, the writing process. I think a lot of people would.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a combination of both. I'll relate it to baseball. Like, if the professionals only played baseball when they wanted to, they wouldn't be near as good as they are. So there's a certain amount of diligence you have to have with anything that you do in life if you want to do it professionally, and music is no different. So yeah, there are days that I do a lot of co-writing as well. So I love writing with other people. They bring something to the table that I wouldn't, think to go that direction or whatever it is. But I'll set aside a few days and be like, hey, we're going to write this week, and come on, and we'll try and get down as many ideas as we can. But other days, I'll see a movie, or I'll read something, or someone will kind of share their life story with me at a show or something. I'm like, man, I'm so inspired. So inspiration is a really big key to writing songs. It's hard to write when you're not inspired. That's why during the writing process, like, you'll have a guy at the computer and he's building a track the entire time you're writing, because it causes inspiration. And it's a lot easier to write from that place, but it doesn't always come. So you kind of have to be diligent and do it anyway sometimes.
Yeah. So are you somebody, like, you look at it as work, where, hey, Monday through Friday, I'm sitting down and I'm writing, or is it, again, it could be at 11 o'clock at night. It could be at noon. It could be, first thing in the morning.
It's kind of a combo of both. I mean, I definitely I try and get in the studio a little bit every day. Doesn't always happen. But yeah, I try and just make myself get in here, even if it's not to write a song, even if it's just to play the piano or do something. I think that's really important. But yeah, sometimes I'm like getting into bed and I'm like, whoa, that's a cool thought. And I look at my wife, I'm like, I'll be right back. And by right back, I mean like 2 hours later.
Yeah,
I go and flesh out this idea in the studio. But yeah, it just kind of depends. But always carve out time. Yeah. Because if we just did it when we were inspired, we'd have a lot less music in the world.
Yeah, I love that, because I think a lot of people, they look at it. I don't think they understand fully what goes into a profession like being an artist. I think they look at it as, it's fun and it's cool, and again, they see the fun stuff, but they don't see that it is work, and it's a lot of work. It's daily work, and there's no limits. It's certainly not a 9 to 5 by any means.
Right. So, I mean, some days it's 0 to 0, but other days it's 7 a.m. to 1 a.m., late that night. It just, there's no schedule, which is one of the cons to being a musician that I found, whether it's being on the road. It's kind of funny, like during this quarantine season, my wife and I have both like had a fresh taste on what it's like to have a routine. So we wake up and we work out, and we have our Bible time and we read, and it's like a scheduled thing, and it's been so nice. And I'm kind of like, oh, I need to be able to figure out how to do this on the road as well.
I was going to ask you, can you take what you've learned during this time and bring it with you on the road? I know, again, working in professional sports, we have our home routines and we have our road routines.
Sure.
Have you given any thought as to how maybe you could bring this with you into your competitive music life on the road?
Yeah, there have been lots of things that I've learned or acquired during this crazy season that we're in. Some things that I can implement during a live show. We've had nothing but time, so I've done a lot of research and figured out some cool gadgets to use live. But on the more just like personal side, I've seen firsthand the importance of, one, having a schedule and a routine and what that does for the rest of your day. I read somewhere, I forget where it was, but the most important thing that you can do in the morning is to make your bed. And I'm like, really? Like, that seems so like unimportant, but it does something to your brain that like the first thing you do when you wake up, you accomplish something. Yeah. I'm a very goal-oriented person anyway. So when you make your bed, it's like, man, it just sets the trajectory for the rest of your day. And it's like, wow. So then it just snowballs into other things. And it's true. So I'm going to try and do more of that while on the road. it's really easy to get just like lethargic on the road. It just is like,
Yeah.
you're up really late because of the show the night before. So you sleep in late, you roll out of bed in time for lunch. It's not healthy. So I'm going to try and do more of that.
It's kind of cool, when you look at some of these musicians, I've been fortunate to meet a lot of really cool ones over the years. What separates the guys that it's kind of like baseball, the guys that come up for what we call a cup of coffee or have a very short career compared to the ones that have a long career. The ones that have a long career, they make that commitment to bettering themselves. I've read something like Mick Jagger runs like 5 to 7 miles a day, and
wow.
yeah, when you break down the routines, I worked with a band OAR a couple last year, and these guys are in amazing shape because before every show they train together. It's super cool how those positive routines can really carry over into your career.
Yeah, man, it's so important. It really is.
Colton, I wanted to share this actually right before I got on with you. This guy I know out in Arizona, he's in his 70s. He sent me this and he said, "My parents used to say, the state of your bed generally dictates the state of your head."
Woo! That's so good. It's true, man. It sounds so cliche or feels unimportant, but it's true. So yeah, your parents know something when they tell you to make your bed.
They do. They're onto something. So I love to get deep with people in a way maybe that, like, this is a conversation. It's meant to help people. And again, I've met people through the years. They idolize athletes, they idolize musicians, but they don't always know what that musician or what that athlete is dealing with. And I love to talk to you about what are some of the things that you have to overcome on a daily, weekly basis. Like, what are some maybe reoccurring themes where you have to talk yourself into a more positive state or into a more competitive state?
Sure, man. I think we've all faced those things during the season. It's funny because about 3 years ago, I was actually going through a similar season. I wasn't necessarily confined to my house, but my job was in jeopardy. To quick recap is I went on American Idol TV show several years ago and did a deal with them, which looped in a record label called Capital Christian Music Group, and love those guys. They're amazing. But 3 years ago, we very suddenly parted ways, just over some contractual stuff, and yeah, it was really scary. Didn't know if I was going to continue doing music, and had a bunch of fears and questions, and like I've mentioned, I'm a faith guy, so it was kind of an opportunity to practice what I preach, which, dang it, I hate those moments, but I think they're good. I think they stretch you and they make you into a better person. So we did that. Even if you're not a religious person, every day we're faced with the opportunity to choose fear. And man, even just scientifically, psychologically, fear does something to your brain that's not good and it's not healthy, and it causes anxiety and all these other things. And I was kind of in that state, and my wife is like, "Hey, like, it's going to be okay. Like, if we believe what we believe, then it's going to turn around." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." So we stood on that, and a few months later I did another record deal, and it just exceeded our expectation, and it's been so great. But I was able to take that experience 3 years ago, and now coming into this season where, man, touring is like not happening at all unless you're playing drive-ins, which I don't know if that's working or not.
Me neither.
But yeah, it's like, it's a big opportunity, and I guess like the overwhelming choice is to choose fear. But again, it's like, you know what, like, let's practice what we preach, and we're going to choose faith instead. And we know that it's going to work out for our good, and we don't know how yet, and we're still kind of in the thick of it. But yeah, that's kind of what faith is. Faith wouldn't be near as hard if you could see it.
Yeah.
But it's about those things that you can't see. So we're kind of there right now.
Yeah. What is that? So I love what you're saying, because fear is definitely dominant and faith you can't see. What are your words of inspiration to somebody that doesn't have faith, or, when they're in that season like you were in, or maybe they're in that season now, like, what do you do every day to begin to reduce the fear and turn it more into faith? Like, what's the routine that you took during that period where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm scared to death. I'm sure there's financial components to it, identity components.
Yeah.
What does the day-to-day look like to get yourself grooving again?
Yeah. Man, it's honestly a little difficult to explain without the faith component.
Well, go ahead, put that in there. That's
But
who you are, right?
yeah, man, again, just I'll explain it from my perspective, but we obviously believe in God, but there's a counterpart to that as well, which is the devil. And we think that both are very real. And the Bible says that fear comes from the enemy and faith comes from God. It's pretty simple if you actually break it down. And so anytime that fear arises or something happens that could cause fear, whatever, my wife and I try our best to just block it out, not to pretend it's not there, but just to mentally choose faith instead. And it may sound like I'm oversimplifying, a situation. I've got, friends even in the music industry who are like, man, I don't know if we're going to be able to pay the house note this month or whatever. So it's maybe easier said than done in some circumstances, but man, again, we believe the Bible to be true, and God's word never returns void. Sorry, I'm going into preacher mode on you, but
no, listen, I think maybe
our perspective.
Yeah, that's great. I think some people may benefit from that. Maybe I'll benefit.
But, yeah, man. I've had personal experiences in my life that I can't deny. Experiencing something and hearing someone else talk about something are two completely different things. I grew up in church and grew up in an atmosphere where all these things were talked about, but it wasn't until I personally experienced, God working in my life that I was like, whoa, I get it. So if you haven't had that yet, like it's cool. Like I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm just sharing kind of my perspective on the topic. But yeah, if you don't have faith, just some practical things: wake up and make your bed. Start on the right foot and have a schedule. And man, this is something that my parents told me a long time ago, and it can go into a lot of different avenues, but kind of like you are who you hang around. So if you hang around people who are constantly negative, you're going to become negative and you're going to start to see the world that way. But if you put yourself around people who are positive and who are for you and will encourage you, it just makes it so much easier to go through life. My wife and I try and have, close friends and family around us who do exactly that. So that's just more on a practical side.
Yeah. How did it, I mean, I'm guessing it's similar in how you deal with this, but I would guess, being an artist, you see maybe what some of the big guys, in the music space have done.
Sure.
Maybe you ask yourself questions. How do I become that at some point? How do you prevent yourself from looking too much at other people or looking too much in the future and realizing, hey, I'm Colton and this is my journey? Like, how do you stay within yourself without stretching to be somebody else or, to get somewhere too soon or too quickly? How do you deal with all that?
Yeah, man. I did that in high school. Actually, I started to become this person of always looking on the other side of the fence, or there's nothing wrong with dreaming or having goals, but I feel like I missed out so much on what was already around me or the opportunities that I had right in front of me because I was so busy looking ahead or looking to my right or left. That's actually really easy to do. Like we'll be touring, and a band will come out and they'll just kill it. They'll do such a great job and they'll use pyro or they'll use something or whatever. And you're like, oh, I wish we had pyro or, whatever. It's like, no, it's like that band is reaching, a demographic or a certain type of person that I just won't ever reach, and vice versa. We're all created like so unique and different. There's no one like you. So be you and be true to who you are, because it's a lot easier for you to be you than for someone else to try and impersonate you, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And it's the same in music. Like, I'm a big Kanye fan, but that doesn't mean I'm going to make music like Kanye. That would be, you know, pretty weird, to be honest with you, if I tried to make music like Kanye. You know, or Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran's got a thing, and it works really well for Ed. But if I tried to do it, it wouldn't be as authentic, because it's not who I am, and it's not the type of music that I do. So, yeah, it's about just, one is knowing who you are, finding out your strengths, and then, working on those strengths and making them even stronger. And then you have this opportunity to share what it is you've accomplished or been through or whatever, with the world, and hopes to inspire someone else to do the same thing.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. I wanted to ask you about your song Miracles, because I feel like that's a big part of you too.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of, I think it's important for people, so if you haven't heard it, to check it out, because it's a powerful song, especially during this season that we're in. But what inspired that song? And it sounds like that's been a song that's, again, catapulted you again.
Yeah. Man, that song came out of that, 3-year hiatus to some. I was writing my butt off that whole time, but again, things that people don't see. But it was during that season where my label and I split, didn't know if music was in the future. And in slowing down, like, I don't know, like during the season, we try to see the positives in things, and during the season of quarantine, even, it's like my wife and I would look around and be like, man, we're still pretty blessed. Like, sure, like, income isn't what it was last year, or touring's not whatever, but it's like, man, we're still so blessed. And it's not a coincidence. I think a lot of people like to label it as coincidences or whatever, but it's like, man, miracles are happening around us every single day. And it took us to get to this state to see it and to realize it and appreciate it for what it is. So that's kind of what inspired the song, really. It's like, man, I'm so glad you stepped in when you did, and you saved me from a life of misery. And yeah, thanks for what you do. It's kind of like an open letter to God, even. It's like, man, I see it. I'm sorry it took me so long, but I see it. And yeah, I hope that you guys can see it too. I hope that out of this season that there are a lot of positives. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. That's super cool. So I call this show the Becoming a Champion show, because I feel like we're all on that journey, and we're all trying to be better, and we're all trying to be champions in our own life, in our own space, and our families. But I love to end by asking you this question. What does the word champion mean to Colton Dixon?
Wow. I think there are a lot of layers to that word. I think success. I think overcomer. It's like whether you're watching Rocky or, whatever new movies out there, there's always that moment where it's kind of make or break time. And the champion is the one who pushes through, who chooses faith over fear, or who chooses to keep fighting when they can't see it. And I think that's a big part to that word as well. But how I personally relate to that word, it's really easy to get caught up in numbers, and of course, like, music is part business, part art form, part journey. It's this weird dichotomy of things. But man, whenever I'm at a show and someone comes up to me and is like, man, I was on the verge of suicide, and one of your songs just really hit me during that moment. Just wanted to say thanks. Like, those are the moments that define that word to me, and makes every second of songwriting, every second of phone interviews, whatever it is, it makes it all worth it to me. And yeah, it's really cool when you have the ability to do something that not only you love, but something that's also bigger than just yourself. because I think a lot of people will work on their kingdom or their, you know, whatever you want to call it, their dynasty for a long time, and at the end of it, they feel empty. So whenever you get to work on something that will impact other people, it's like, oh man, sign me up, let's do it. So
Yeah, that's
really
awesome.
thankful.
Yeah, it never gets old, right? Making people happy
No,
and
it doesn't.
inspiring them, and you know, you get to live out, you know, your dream, and in return, you get to help other people reach theirs, which is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, man, so thankful to be able to do it, really.
Yeah, that's super cool. Awesome, man.